really amazing. So I would like to introduce James G., who is an economist at the University of Florida. And his talk is called The Gap is Not Just a Clothing Store. This is a very interactive class. And so I've pushed everyone up into the front. Come on up into the front, because he would like questions and conversation, and it would be helpful to the folks on Zoom if you want to put comments in the chat. We'll figure out how to monitor that. So Dr. G is the University of Florida professor in the Food and Resource Economics Department, and he looks at the societal impacts of environmental economics, water scarcity, and agriculture. Nothing important here. He researches water rights, price anomalies on agricultural systems, mining, women's agency, and he's going to guide us through gap analysis of different countries' lifestyles and the disparate impacts our warming world is going to have on different populations. So please give a warm Okamic welcome to James G.
Thank you so much for having me here. This is my second time here. I enjoyed every minute of it last year, so hopefully this time soon. Oh, before I start, the plastic program. The Swedish are doing it. Singaporeans are doing it. The Japanese are doing it. Even the Chinese are doing it. Think about it. Like, they're all doing it. So I was, one of our colleagues has a Swedish paper where she was studying the Swedish essentially garbage classification system. They have like dozens of degrees you have to put into every bins, and plastic is one of them. And then you have to do it. Singaporeans, Japanese, they can do it. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a wild thing at all. It's people are doing it at this moment. All right. Okay. So, oh, there's suddenly 10 people in here on Zoom. Okay. Hello, Zoom audience. Okay. Let's see how to. Now I seem to have pinged Janice, and I don't know how to unping her. Wait. Are the 10 people? Okay. All right. Okay. And let me just do this. Okay.
James, yeah. I want to remind everyone it's okay to ask questions during, and also the folks on Zoom, to if you are trying to communicate by chat and we're not paying attention to you, unmute and holler.
Yeah. So, so the reason why, so I was just off of a academic meeting where the vibe seems to be that, so I'm an economist, and the words out there are that our economists are pretty mean to each other. They, especially the very, very good economists, they interrupt each other all the time. So I'm sort of used to everything. So, but please, it's a way of getting interactive discussions from all of you. All right, now, this is not specifically about my own work, though some of my own work sort of show up at the at some point if we choose to pick the right countries. Now, I know that all of you probably have. Now, I am originally from Shanghai, China. Okay, now I'm 33 years old. I think most of you are a couple of years older than myself, only a couple of years older. I also have a 3-year-old daughter that I raised with my wife, who's also an economist. Now, in the next about 45 minutes, I'm just gonna show you pictures. Okay, that's the only thing I'm gonna do. Okay, lots of pictures. Pictures from different countries, and we'll probably start with the United States. Okay, now I'll tell you in a bit later why am I showing you these pictures. Now, these are all families from the United States. Okay, scroll down. we can actually see any one of them will be fine with me, but does any of these pictures, so, okay, I should explain more. Each of these pictures are family, okay? And if we pick on one of them, we can go very, very deep into their lives, all telling pictures. Is there a family that you really want to dive into? Yeah. So, I should explain. So, the dollar numbers are their income per adult. Okay. So in this picture, there are 3 adults. On average, they earn $4,600. They're not necessarily spending all of it. It's not the cost. Well, it might cost more if they're buying a mansion or something. They might take on mortgage, right? But then these are their income. Okay, I can randomly pick a sound much better. Okay. All right, this is good. Any family you want to dive into, I can randomly pick. Dee dee da dee da dee da dee da. Okay. Let's do this one. All right. Okay. So I can read off this family. J and N lives in the United States. J is 33-year-old, and he is a social worker. His partner is 26 years old, and she works in research, and they have a 1-year-old daughter. Okay. Now, here's some impressions of the family. Let's do this. So this is their alcoholic drink. This is their armchair. This is their bathroom. This is their bedroom. Now, what do you think? If you have to describe this family in, let's say, 3 or 5 words, what do you think? Messy. Okay, I can tell you that my bedroom is messier than that. We have a 3-year-old, and I'm not the most organized person on this planet. But then, yeah, I agree. It's a bit messy. Okay. Busy. They are. All right. It's their bike. Books.
I'll use the microphone for the Zoom folks so they can hear as well.
Yeah.
So raise your hand and I'll pass around.
Yeah. Okay. This is their car. Okay. Ceiling. Okay. Is there anything that surprised you so far? Nothing, right? Nothing that it looks like a very, very, I would even say, stereotypical American family, right? There's nothing that surprises you at all. It's just normal, other than the messiness. You can look more. There's just nothing that surprises. I don't think there's any. It certainly doesn't surprise me, and this is the first time I've seen this family, as you do. Okay, they've added a lot of pictures. Nothing seems to surprise us. It seems very typical, right? Okay. Now, yeah, don't worry about it. All right. I know many of you have traveled a lot. Can you shout the last country that you have been into that's not in Europe? Singapore. Okay.
Japan.
Japan. Canada. Ooh, okay. Singapore, Japan, Canada. Let's see if they have Singapore. Okay. First come, first serve. right, let's see if they have Singapore. Singapore. Sorry, no Singapore. I lived in Singapore for a while. It's a lovely country. Next one, Japan. They don't have Japan either. Canada. There is Canada. Okay. All right. There's only one family in Canada. Okay. It's fine. Can look at it. All right. It's the armchair. See if this works. This works. Lovely backyard. Bathroom. Bedroom. A lot less messier. Oh yeah, a lot less. This is very organized. Impressed. Computer. Cups, mugs, cutlery.
I don't think you can compare them too well because one is a family with one child and looks like another one coming, and this looks like a retired couple. So I don't think they make a good comparison in that way.
In terms of messiness, right? Or are you thinking about other dimensions? Right, right. And you can also think about them in different life cycles, right? So one of them, one of the family is just starting their family-ish, and they're happily together. Let's see if they have anything. They didn't say anything, but they. Of course. And is there anything that strike you from this family? No. Yeah.
There are things that are not only necessities,
Mhm.
but that show there is additional income.
There's things that showing additional. For example, this very pretty flower. Would you say they have good taste? Ish. Yeah. They're neat. They're a neat couple. Yes, they're very neat.
Well, not only are they settled, they seem to have not only are they settled, they seem to have a greater appreciation of things beyond the necessities of everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
More
mm-hmm.
luxuries, more art.
More luxurious, more art. Yes, yes, yes.
The comment was, and the books.
Their hands. Wow. Exactly, right? They have houses are, let's say, bigger than mine. Okay, now, this is a Canadian. Now, but then, would you be surprised if you walk into one of your friends' home and found exactly this? You probably wouldn't. Right? It's also very, and if you walk into a friend's home and their house looked like this, you probably wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't either. It's still pretty. It's very on the taste. They have very, very good taste. Now, all right. Can you give me some other countries? Spain. Okay. I have one restriction. Can you give me a country? I have to give you more restrictions to do this. Can you give me a country or a couple of countries that are not in the developed world? So not in Europe or North America or Singapore, Japan, or Korea. Peru. Okay, Peru. Okay.
Can you repeat,
Peru.
please?
Peru. Yeah, I heard it correct, right? Peru. Okay. Let me see if I actually have a. Okay, let's do this. Let's see a family in Peru. See a family in Peru. All right. There are 5 families in Peru. I happen to have looked at this family before. Okay, they even have a. For the Zoom people, I need to reshare because Emily says she cannot hear. and I haven't shared anything. Looks like. Have I shared? Let me share it. Let me share the screen again. Okay. All right. Is anyone monitoring? Is anybody monitoring Zoom at all? Okay. So it was on me. Okay, I can monitor it. Wait. Where's my Zoom screen?
Zoom, remember you can just shout out.
Yeah, just shout
Yeah.
it. Barely frugal Tibet.
Yeah. Dr. G, if we can leave the chat up, that would make it maybe easier
Leave
for
the chat.
if that's possible.
I can monitor the chat.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was also supposed to teach online, so I'm supposedly okay at this, but don't quote me on it.
You're doing great.
And you guys are better than my undergrad students, a lot better. Okay. All right. Okay. This is a family in Peru. They have 3 adults and 5 children. O is 47-year-old and she works as a cleaner, and husband G is 60-year-old and he works as a farmer. They have 5 children. Okay, let's see. This is adding spices to food while cooking. Look at their ceiling specifically. You've seen the family, the US family, you've looked at the ceiling. Their ceiling look just like this. Look at theirs. Don't know Spanish. If anyone knows Spanish, what are they saying? Something about chicken. Pollo. One chicken, a lot of soup. All right. How they wash their dishes, presumably. Okay, not loading. Not loading. Okay. What do you think? We've looked at bedrooms for a while for the American families and the Canadian families. What do you think about this?
They're not exactly sitting down at the dinner table together.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I would say that the house itself has to be very small, and that they are utilizing the space all day and all night, and they have to change the way they use it, and there's no running water because they have buckets,
yeah.
and there's no electricity because they're probably, is there electricity?
Is that a
Oh yeah, maybe that's a refrigerator. But
Oh,
there's
it's lighted, and the house is lighted at least.
Oh, okay.
Right,
But
there's
there's,
lighting in there.
you know, they're cooking over a wood stove and utilizing what they can get.
Right. Let's actually look at their house and figure out how big it is. Okay, we can sort of figure it out. This is where they get water to drink, I think. Okay. And also notice who is getting water. In many of the contexts, not only in Peru, but I've seen it in other contexts, it's usually the women, the girls, who are actually fetching water. Okay. This is the street, which look a lot different from the entrance that I just drove in. The ceiling, drinking water. Let's see if they have a freezer. Okay. Now, this is interesting. This is their front door. Okay. Now, we can go back to the American family. They should have matching pictures of their front door. This is a garage door, but you sort of get the idea. This is their oh, here's their home. It's not small, but it's different, right? It's not quite finished. Ah, the roof, not particularly. What is the roof made, if anybody can tell? Look like tiles, yeah. Okay, I have more questions on this. Okay, now, let's look at a final family, okay? And this time, let me pick. I have a family in mind. You're thinking about this? Okay, let's do this. This is a family in Kenya. Okay, visit the family. Okay. More. All right. So let me read off what it says. M, age 55, lived in Kukuma village with her 4 children. Her husband lives in Juba, South Sudan. She lives in Kenya and he lives in South Sudan. She used to be a farmer in South Sudan but does not work in Kukuma. She left South Sudan because of flooding, war, and the lack of education for her children. The family lives in a refugee camp, which was very little money but with access to aid in the form of food. And they can get assets, and solar panels and cooking pots are provided by the United Nations. Okay. This is, I believe, one of their sons answering a phone. This is their floor. This is how they cook. Presumably this is their house in a refugee camp. Okay, them doing dishes. They're eating. Notice the surroundings. I believe this is probably where they live. Jesus. This is the family. Let me check on Zoom. While it's loading, let me check on Zoom and see everything's okay. Okay. The Zoomers get sound from the mic of the computer unless you're near enough for it to pick up your voice. Cannot, very hard to hear on Zoom. Okay, this might be an issue, which I don't know how to solve. I can speak like this and let me know in the chat if that works better. And in the meantime, I can turn off the volume on my Mac so that I don't involuntarily cause any. Oh. Hello? Hello? I can just turn off this. Okay. Okay. Ooh. All right. Okay. It was better for a bit than worse. Okay, I'll try to speak like this, Emily, and hopefully that. Please do continue to let me know if you cannot hear me. All right. Okay, this is how they're getting water. Looks like probably the refugee camp have tap water installed in that, and she is getting water with her children, looks like. Okay. Do you notice anything different for her hand? Hmm? Yeah, somebody see something?
Her little fingers are
Little.
shorter.
Right. Do you know why that is? I don't either. Is there a doctor in here that might know why that is?
They are shorter.
They are shorter.
Yeah.
Their palm seems to be a bit different. It's more rough. I mean, we can't see it clearly. Is there a way to turn off the light in front? All the way, yeah, all the way. I think that makes the, yeah, it's much better. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's better. If you look at your own hands, look at theirs, and she is only 47. I'm 33 and my hands are smooth for now. Well, I just dislocated my pinky finger, so my finger doesn't bend now. But my hands are smooth. Hers are not. This is where they live, refugees. Not that bad, actually. I might need to show you another family, but these are the kids playing. Kids playing outside. Now, let me actually show you another family that I found out.
Before you go on to
Yes.
another family,
Yes.
I just wanted to point out one thing. They have a lot of many of the poorer families. I just touched that. Many of the poorer families have more children for two reasons. One is that if they're farmers, that they need them to help. But the second thing is, many of the children die young, and so they have more children to ensure that they will have children to take care of them when they get older.
We can go a 4 hour on this, but isn't or a full day on this. But I think you're exactly right. And plus, their children doesn't get a lot of education, which really pushes them into the marriage pregnancy cycle instead of going to college. Or I shouldn't even say college, going to middle school. Yeah.
Don't forget lack of birth control.
Right, right. There's lack of birth control. But also there are cultural norms that are in many of the societies where more children are the norm. It's not, it's different, right? The norms are different. Women's are supposed to be living on a different family role than what we understand here or where I was growing up. Now, let me show you a final family where, let me see, it's either in, where every time I see it, it shocks me. Let's do this one. This is a family in Myanmar, in Southeast Asia, okay? A lot of children, as you said. This is where they're getting their water. Now, what do you think are in this water, in these waters? This is a serious question. What's in the water? It could be anything from bacteria, chemical. Bangladesh, which is nearby, just had a huge cholera outbreak. Salt, if you're on a coastal community. Because when the sea level rises, the salt from the ocean essentially pushes into the underground water and the surface water in there. Some of these waters cannot be, you're not supposed to drink them, but then they do. Did you notice anything on these hands, on this hand?
The hands of the poorest are the most hardworking because most of them earn any income they get from working with their hands and their bodies.
Right. And you mean by really, really working, meaning wheeling tools for agriculture. I mean, this Myanmar is a country that mainly grows rice, and I would bet their life to be no different. Looks like I can full screen it. No, I can't get back. No. Wait. Tools, no. He is old, sure, but it's also lack of dental care, looks like, right? Now let's look at the surroundings. This is where they live. Looks even like a village, because there seems to be somebody that's living there. Okay. The tools, toilet paper. Oh man. This is labeled toilet paper, and if you can't read, the poorest family uses water or leaves to clean themselves, not papers. And they literally means that. Okay. This trash or waste. This is the family's wall. That's wall inside. It's made of, is that bamboo-ish? This is their wardrobe. Okay. Now we can flip back to the American family and see what their wardrobe looked like. Don't have a picture on wardrobes. Looks like. Oh, and this is back to the American family of 30s. The 35-year-old social worker and the 26-year-old young mother. Hands look very, very different. Now, this is a climate change talk. So, and I'm an economist, and so economists, economists do it with numbers. Now, by doing it with numbers, what I really mean is the following. Even with those pictures, we can think about how can we form a more systematic way to compare between these families. We know their family, we sort of know their family by now. We have an impression of what they look like. Now I want us all to think about a set of different questions. Okay, questions that we can actually ask each of these families, because in these pictures, we can probably find answers to each of these. Now, we've sort of looked at drinking water. We've sort of looked at sanitation. In many of these poor families, sanitations are not great. We've sort of looked at cookware. In many of these, now, in the American family, and in the, did I save the Canadian family? I didn't. Let's see. This kitchen sink. Let's see if I can find where they cook. Very, very classical. I mean, I have one at my home. It's a regular oven. Right? We have also seen families in Peru, families in Kenya, families in Myanmar cooked with very, very different appliances, or if you will, call it appliances. It's just a stove that sets on. We use woods to cook it. That also begs the question, who will be the person who's cooking in these families? And what are the implications to them? Right? It's usually the women who are cooking, and if you're really cooking with, let's see, just pick the Peruvian family. They're cooking, I think we have a cooking picture. Oh, this is their source of cool and source of heat, by the way. Okay. They do have electricity though, but then this seems to be, there doesn't seem to be any temperature control around the house. Is there any cooking? Cooking, let's see, plate of food, light source. They have light in the kitchen, hand grain. Source drinking water, ceiling. Oh, this is their cooking pot. And where did they cook? Can't find it, sorry. Maybe in this family. This is, oh God. This is their refrigerator. Yeah. Found a cooking one. Okay. It turns out that if you cook like this, the smokes are going to be everywhere. And if anything we know about, the science has moved pretty far over the past 15 years. But then if we're exposed with what we will call indoor air pollution, it shortens people's lives. Some estimates would say by 5 years or more. Just by exposing to cookware, you're probably, these women who may or may not smoke, they're almost like smoking because of the smokes and particles they're inhaling into their lungs, unfortunately. Now, this is a climate talk, okay? So I'm gonna pivot to climate a bit, okay? And there are two parts that I want to touch that I want all of us to think about. One of the part is about what I would call the impact of climate change, meaning if something happens, how are the family going to deal with it? Okay, how are the family gonna, let's say, swing it? Okay, I've got 3 scenarios for us. We can probably do maybe 1 or 2, depending on how many time do I have? About 15 minutes. I can do one of them, okay? What do you think will happen to this family if there is, let's say, a category 2 hurricane happening to this family? It just happened here, like yesterday. What do you think will happen to this family if a hurricane blows their way?
They certainly will be among the first to lose everything they have.
Yeah. lose their house, lose their, didn't say what they do for a living. They're on aid money. But then the aid people are sort of, we can look at the Peruvian family. They have a house. This is their house. Shouldn't hover on that. And I'll remind you that the Peruvian family is slightly richer. They have electricity running in their homes. They have a structure where if it is light rain, their house probably wouldn't be full of water. What if there's a hurricane? It's not going to be good. I don't know whether their home will survive it. Maybe, maybe not. But it's not the home that we're thinking about when we're going back to every one of our homes every day, just tonight. Right? It's not like that. I would bet that they're probably gonna lose their electricity. Luckily, I didn't lose my electricity, but then we certainly have folks losing their electricity during the hurricanes. Praying for them. This family is probably gonna lose their electricity. Okay. Look at their water. One thing we do know about hurricanes are after hurricane, water quality becomes really bad. Okay, there are all sorts of pollutants being washed away into the water bodies, and if you're drinking water from a surface water source, that's what causes a lot of the disease spreads after the hurricanes. Right? Now, we can even think about the Myanmar family. I cannot start to think what's going to happen if a hurricane comes. For one, their houses doesn't seem to be flood proof at all. It's flat. It's just laying on the ground. So I don't know what a rain is gonna do to them, but certainly if it is hurricane, that house is gone. Completely. If not gone, completely flooded. They'll have nowhere to live. If their livelihood depends on rice, the rice will be gone as well. Right? Everything's gone. The American family is probably fine. They're going to suffer some. They're going to lose electricity. Electricity is going to be back in 3 days. They're probably going to be fine, comparatively speaking. Now, what does that tell us? Thoughts?
Well, not only is the house stronger, but they would have, if their house were not stronger, or they might be told to evacuate for wherever they are, they would have a place to go. These
Right.
other people do not have a place to go. I mean, you live or you don't live, but
Right.
there's nobody picking them up and taking them to a cave or something.
Right.
Insurance occurs to me.
Insurance.
Insurance that if they are financially damaged,
Mm-hmm.
FEMA will step in, or
Right.
faith-based communities will come in.
Right.
There's a safety network in the developed world that is not there in the third world.
There's FEMA, there's faith-based authorities, there's civilian or NGOs that will step in. You're required to get flood insurance anywhere here if you live in a flood zone. The federal government will declare disaster declarations and funnels millions of dollars into communities that are impacted. That's what we at least know about hurricanes here. It's still a tragedy, but then the governments are doing everything to help. In many parts of the world, these things doesn't exist, for one. For two, and this is demonstrated in many of the research done by economists and policy analysts, many of these families who do agriculture, subsistence agriculture, they don't want insurance. A lot of organizations, IFPRI, FAO, World Bank, goes into these villages and asks them, do you want to protect your agriculture income? Do you want to protect your crop at 10% of the cost? They don't. They don't have it. Yeah, exactly. They don't have it. They don't have the money. They either don't have the money or they don't realize, wow, now they might have the money. They just want to swing it because their cash is so short. They probably don't want to spend on insuring against something that may not happen. And this is almost a universal phenomenon. In India, in Bangladesh, in Peru, in Africa, many organizations have gone into these communities urging them to take on agriculture insurance. Most don't. And that's worldwide. They just don't. And when a disaster comes, is there anybody to save them? Not at all, right? Now, the last question that I want us to think about is the following. Okay. Let's think about a world where every one of us needs to reduce our carbon emissions. Okay. After all, climate change is a global phenomenon, and it seems that the most effective way to combat it is to stop emitting carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gas into the air. Okay. Now, look at the American family. Okay. If this family is asked to reduce 30% of their carbon emissions, what can they do? And how would that impact them? And this question can be asked for every one of us, including myself. If you are asked to reduce 30% of carbon emissions, I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying anybody is forcing you to do it. You don't have to do it. It's completely fine. But then just picture a world where you have to reduce 30% of your carbon footprint. How would you make that happen?
Okay, you had a class last week on
I didn't know that, but
two
yeah,
weeks
okay.
ago on how to do this.
Okay, I didn't know that, but okay.
That family obviously has a lot of things. There are plastic things, there's wrapping, there's things that are not critical to living that they could get by without.
Reduce plastic wrappings, yes. What else can they do? Yeah. I'll get another one.
Reduce the use of electricity.
Reduce the use of electricity by doing what?
You can reduce the thermostat at night. You can learn to live with higher temperatures during the day, and especially in the summer, like we're all supposed to do now.
Probably don't leave the AC on.
You can ride your bike more often.
Ride your bikes more often, right?
You can put on a coat in the winter. You can, your transportation, you can go at least to a hybrid car, that kind of thing. Or have one car instead of two cars.
Right.
Use a use a scooter. There are all kinds of things you can do to reduce that.
They do have a bike, though. Yeah. There. It seems that they have a car. I can show you the car. I don't think it's a hybrid model, though. Don't quote me on it, but I don't think it's a hybrid model. Yes, they have. They seem to have 2 cars that are gas powered. They have a bike rack behind the car, so they're probably biking somewhere.
Isn't one of the biggest carbon generators air travel? So they'd have to give up all travel.
They have to give up all travel. Okay. So essentially attend Zoom.
But they work in different places, so they got to have 2 cars.
They gotta have 2 cars. Yes, it's a necessity.
They can share a car with, share rides, with somebody. They can try to share rides with somebody else. But
Mhm.
even as I said, just going to a hybrid car will help.
Keep it. Going to hybrid cars, they don't have to, they don't have to turn on their dishwashers, washers and dryers. They don't have to use their dryers to heat their clothes to 130 degrees. That helps. ACs. Do you think that's a lot of impact? It's regular things that we do, right? That we can make choices. Every one of us can make choices, and I bet some of you are actively making these choices to reduce your emissions, right? Now, the other thing that they could do is, if the electricity is less dependent, if our entire grid is less dependent on fossil fuels, that makes their carbon footprint smaller. Let's picture a world where the entire electricity system where they get their electricity is powered by solar, wind, and hydro. Then they essentially don't have carbon emissions if they run everything on electricity, right? Now, our power grid system is not designed that way. Last time I checked, at least 60% of Florida's grid is still on fossil fuel powered. So we're not there yet. But then at least, now, we have gone a long way from reaching 40% renewables here in this day. Okay? Now, for the time being, I have 2 minutes, so I wish none of us are gonna be put into a situation like this family. Think about what can they do if somebody asks them, let's say the World Bank is asking them, if you want this money, you got to reduce 30% of your carbon emissions. I sense your reaction being that the World Banks are a bunch of jerks. Like, how can you ask them to do that? But then think about it. Can you picture a world, or can you picture actions where this family reduce their carbon emissions? No. Now, well, let's think about it this way. Where are the sources of them emitting greenhouse gas into the air? Cooking fuel, yes. Can they do anything? Food. You're thinking. I don't think they're eating a lot of meat. That's one. If meat, probably poultry. So it's not the steak buffet there we're thinking about. You can think about, if they are growing rice, reduce fertilizer use, because part of the nitrogen fertilizers will go into the air as greenhouse gas. Are we really gonna ask them to cut 30% of their fertilizer use?
Well, actually, I was involved with something, but we can't ask them to cut back on their fertilizer, but we can help them not to need to use the fertilizer, using like no-till farming, going back to the way, because we've taught them to now have to till and use fertilizers and so forth. But the way that their ancestors did was no-till farming, and it can still work. So part of it's our fault, and with the way we help them. When you get to it, I'd like to talk about the hand pictures.
Yeah. could, but then the other question is, now, let me pose a final question to you. If this family were, if you can propose a couple of changes to these families that could make their life better, what do you think it would be?
Well, I know one of the things that somebody I know was involved with was bringing solar to them.
And solar to them.
But there's like MIT has a solar system they've been working on for 20 years that does not involve glass and metal and so forth, that can be rolled out. And and it's being held up by some of the companies. If we can do that and help them, then we're improving their lives, and we're cutting back on putting electricity in altogether.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I have questions for the MIT scientists. You look at this roof. I don't think you can put solar panels on this roof, can you? I don't think the roof's going to hold.
You don't. They're not always panels that you put on the roof, though. Sometimes they're adjuncts that you can put in the back.
You're
Yeah.
sort of laying it.
Yeah, and
You're laying it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to say one thing about the construction too, and I've seen this in Peru, where people have problems with flooding or mudslides. They just leave the house because it's built like that in Peru. They're not even as well off as the pictures that you showed. And what's interesting about that is they don't expect that house is going to last forever, that it could go, and they're prepared to leave. So what they choose to emphasize in terms of their expenditures are other things, but that house is not one of the things that they think will last forever. So it's a very different orientation than we have in the States.
No, okay. Let me follow up on that. So if you have a house that you're ready to abandon, what are the incentives to make it nicer?
It depends what nicer is. I mean, some of these houses are meant to, in 2 years, we'll get some more leaves and we'll build them again.
Right.
What is nicer? What are their expectations?
You probably wouldn't put an AC to it, would you? You probably wouldn't put an air conditioning to it.
No.
Right? No, there's no way, right? You wouldn't make any investments that make it last longer because you're ready to abandon it. There's deep economic roots to this, because if you don't own something, you're not going to invest in it. That's really deep inside everything and that we run here. So last thought?
Can I ask you something about the hand pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, my question is, I don't want to be insulting to anybody, but who put this together?
Not me.
I knew it wasn't you. Well, why do I keep doing that? That's bad. I should cover this with something. The hand pictures, what you're showing, one of the picture of the United States, which he had these beautiful hands with no anything on them. But if you look at anybody's hands who do physical work, you're going to see the vessels and are on top, and that doesn't show that you're not living in a decent place. It just shows that you do physical work.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the other. And by the way, small finger, at least I don't. When we studied it was genetics, so it would be interesting to find out about it.
Yeah. I think, you're completely
Let's
right.
take a couple more questions.
I'll check on Zoom.
One in each.
I wonder what the outlook is for the children of those families, and what what the parents expect to leave for the children there. I mean, in the U.S., we tend to provide for our children an education and get them started. I don't know how those kids survive into adulthood.
I can say this. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I plan to send her to college, If she happened to have the talent to go to the top college, I will pay for it. Okay, meaning UF or somewhere else, that's good. We'll see. I lived in Boston for a while, so I have my eyes set on Boston. So I've recently published a paper. The paper tackles a problem of Southeastern Asian children. What specifically about them? They're short. They're much, and especially the girls, they're much shorter than the average, let's say, Japanese or Koreans or Singaporeans, which presumably are genetically similar to the Southeast Asians, like Indians or Bangladeshis. Now, our paper specifically looked at sea level rise and too much salt in the water. And our mechanism would be that the families are not growing enough rice because there's too much salt in the land. But we have certainly seen a lot of cases where the most acute reason of why these children are shorter, and you can see this from the data, they're shorter starting in year 1. Okay, all the way to year 5, where WHO is actually measuring, standardizing these metrics, and you can see them in adults. Okay, the average Indian male is probably of this height. I'm not a very, very tall person. The average Indian male is about here. The average Indian female is about here, which is way shorter. Okay, it's a malnutrition issue. They don't have enough food to feed their families, and they're with all these. Now, one of the things about climate change is it disrupts food systems. When you have very hot days, crops doesn't grow, crop dies. When there's too much salt in the soil, crop dies. When there's too much rain, crop also dies. Crops and plants are pretty fragile to many of these disturbances. What results in is you don't have enough food for these children, unfortunately. And back into your question of whether they're having too many children, I don't know. Don't want to comment on that.
Okay, we had in one of the classes that we had, it wasn't this one, they was talking about malnutrition in African families and the distance and the difference in height from when they were there and then when they came over to the United States, and it happens to be 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they did, it isn't just the amount of food, it's what food, and they're not getting enough protein. And what they used to do in Africa was the people in the tribe would go out and get ostrich eggs or eggs, and they found out that 1 egg a day will allow the children to increase in height and mental acuity in all kinds of tribes. My dad came from Russia during the Russian Revolution. He was a kid. All of his cousins were very big. His brothers who were born here were big. He was really very short. Well, and they didn't have enough protein.
My mom was born during the era of Chinese famine. My mom is very, very short. And her brothers and sisters are not like that.
But protein in 1 egg made the difference. 1 egg per day.
That would make an interesting conversation. We've run over time, so I'd like to thank Dr. G for his time and his thought-provoking, emotional lecture. And I'm sure that you'll stick around for a few minutes if you've got individual questions for him. Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a tough topic.